Okay, folks, welcome along to another edition of What Design Thinking and AI Could Be. You're very welcome to join us today. My name is David Townsend. I'm one of the bandmates at What Could Be. You might recognize Caroline Gilliland from one of the previous sessions if you joined. And normally our bandmate Justin Connect is here. He's not here today, which is why you've got me, although he's here in spirit because I'm drinking tea from my Yinzer mug. Anyone that's been to Pittsburgh will know that a Yinzer is someone from Pittsburgh. So welcome, folks. We're really looking forward to hearing another couple of speakers talking about thoughts that are important to them when they think about what design thinking and AI could be and experiences they've had and what they've learned. And we've got two great speakers for you today in Gilliland and JAY-Z. Just a couple of things, a couple of reminders. We like to use these little house rules, you might call them, so be helpful and kind. So use the chat if you want to interact with us. Please do use the chat. That's absolutely fine. Stay on mute if you don't mind. But if you want to speak, that's fine. Just raise your hand in Zoom. You can use the little function to raise your hand and let us know. Or just you can tell us in chat. If you want to leave video off, that's fine. My preference is to leave video on. But if that doesn't work for you, that's totally fine too. But you can leave video off if you like. And we want to create a safe space in these sessions. So, we want to have a good open discussion about these issues. This is the fourth one of these I think we've done. So we do them in the final Thursday of every month. And we want to learn from one another. That takes me on to this next little slide. This is meant to be an informal, open dialogue. We're trying to learn from one another. About this emerging topic. It's in the news a lot. Even this morning I was listening to the radio, and in the BBC they've been talking about AI and brain surgery. Even very experienced surgeons can do a better job with the help of AI, apparently. So maybe it can help us all in design. But it's a learning process. We're trying things out in these sessions with the way we run them. So we're trying to learn how we can make these better as well. So that's our little disclaimer. And one thing just to kick us off, a little bit of a warm-up. One of the things that I'd love to ask and to learn about, and this would be for the benefit of all of us on the call, is just let us know in the chat, where are you going to learn the most about AI? What are you finding is an effective source of information for you? So feel free to go ahead and just drop in the chat any sources that you'd be happy to share. And I'll kick us off by I'm going to share something that it was actually Justin, our colleague Justin, that put me on to. There's a great guy called Ethan Mollick who writes at One Useful Thing on Substack, and he's writing some brilliant stuff. He talks about artificial intelligence can actually make us more creative. I've mentioned the BBC. Where do you guys go to get your news about AI? Fantastic, Jessica, trying it out, talking with colleagues. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't come from a technical background, but you've done some courses through Coursera. Yeah. And John Lamb on LinkedIn. Yeah, lots of updates and creative work. That's brilliant. And there's another tip from Badri, Armand Ruiz on LinkedIn. I found a guy, and he came and spoke on one of these sessions previously, called Benjamin DeHunt on LinkedIn. He's doing some really fascinating work. I think that's there's some great tips. So, LinkedIn, it's moving at such a pace, isn't it? I did a course a few years ago, about 18 months, 2 years ago, on AI on Coursera. A guy called Andrew, I'll put his name in the chat, Andrew NG on Coursera. Have a look at, I don't know how you pronounce his surname, NG, but he's from an organization that are doing some fascinating work. But it's staying in touch. I think talking to people that are doing the work, right, is a great place to learn. Okay, thank you for sharing those. I'm just going to drop one more thing in here. Benjamin, go check out the work of Benjamin. Yeah, he's the granddaddy of machine learning. Absolutely, Andrew Badri. Thank you for that. There's Benjamin DeHunt's LinkedIn profile. Benjamin did this amazing thing where he ran a design sprint that usually takes 5 days. He ran it in 4 hours, and he got ChatGPT to play all the different roles that you would have. and then he launched on LinkedIn the output as a campaign. It was pretty remarkable. He's doing other stuff since then, but Benjamin's an interesting guy to follow. Yeah, so we all go to different places to learn, and hopefully one of those places for you guys is coming to sessions like this, okay, where we can share and hear from one another and learn a little bit more together. So normally we say, hey, has anyone got something they'd like to share? But we're not doing that today, which is why there's a big red cross across it, because we've got two great speakers I've already mentioned. So Caroline, I'm going to hand over to you in a second. I'm going to go on to mute, and everybody else, feel free to follow along, listen to Caroline's talk. If you've got comments or questions, then I'm sure Caroline will try and pick those up at the end, right, Caroline? And, 10 minutes is the guide. We've got a little over half an hour left. So we've got 10 minutes plus maybe a few minutes after. Same for JayZ, and then we might be able to do a little bit of mopping up at the end. So I hope that works for everybody. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to cancel my timer. Okay, Caroline, is that good for you? You let me know when you're sharing.
So can you see my screen?
I can. That's fantastic. So I'll stick you up a little timer if that's okay, and then off you go. I'll go and
Super. So thanks, David. As you have mentioned, I am the third bandmate at What Could Be. And previously I worked as a UX designer and moved into the product management and product owner world, managing a team in the automation and chatbot space while completing my master's in user experience design and applied innovation. That's where I spent some time looking at other emerging technologies such as virtual reality. And I wanted to share some of my experiences adapting to an expanding industry, working with global trailblazing teams, and looking at the wider circle of influence in what sometimes feels like a very product-oriented and ridiculously fast-paced world. So David asked me a few weeks ago about our meetups, and I said that I love that we're engaging in this space and that I wished we also spent time exploring the human side of AI, not only the product space. So here we are, and now I'm presenting. So just like the name of our get-togethers, it's design thinking and artificial intelligence. It's humans and technology. Neither should be working alone, and we will thrive and grow together as always. However, I'll refer to the quote here from Shane Parrish: your expectations won't change the results, but your standards will. I've been told time and time again that the expectations that I have of myself and sometimes of others can be too high, but I tend to turn that around to reflect on what's an expectation versus what's a standard. Expectations tend to be fictional. We've personally made them up, whereas standards are based on quality and factual evidence that you can use as a basis for judgment and creating core values. So I would say that I have high standards, and for a good reason. I see the potential in experiences, services, and people all around me. But that also includes having high standards for the technology we use and how it is created and shared worldwide. This diagram, or something similar, tends to be shared a lot in the design thinking world, the joining of three areas to find that innovation sweet spot where business, technology, and people come together. But how many times do we actually consider the bigger picture? And that's where the fourth circle appears. The sphere encourages us to think with the mindset of being humanity and planet focused. It's the sphere that helps push us to the moonshot ideas that will truly change how we maneuver on this planet. And you may have seen the Design Council's release of the systemic design framework, again talking about the wider lens when we try to solve problems. The key elements of the systemic design framework include 6 principles. And those 6 principles are about being people and planet centered, zooming in and out, testing and growing ideas, being inclusive and welcoming difference, collaborating and connecting, and being circular and regenerative. And there are some key buzzwords in there in those principles that we've heard for a while. But what does that actually look like in our day-to-day, and what tools can we use to ensure we're truly taking a wider approach to problem solving in this rapidly changing world? So much of what we hear about regarding AI is focused on data, but what types of data do we need when we think about being truly humanity and planet focused? If we begin by looking at the circle for viability, we might think of that as business aspirations. So can a product or service increase our efficiency as an organization? Some of the metrics we might use to measure that could be to reduce contact volumes to our support centers. It may be increased usage of self-help material or even self-healing products to promote cost savings through headcount reductions. And I'm sure we've all experienced going around in circles with a chatbot or phone system, trying to speak to a human because you can't get your problem resolved. Speaking of which, it may also be speed to answer for any queries that you need to actually reach a human for. And these are just a few examples of metrics I've seen used in this space. If we actually move then to looking at the circle for feasibility, we might think of that as technical enablers. So can the technology support expanding users? Can it connect to the current technical ecosystem of an organization? For example, how many API calls will we make? Or what is the number of integration points the technology can connect with? We may ask about the technology compliance or have questions about data storage. The viable and technical sphere examples that I've shared are primarily quantitative data. So what about the qualitative? And that's where the circle of desirability comes into play. So we might think of that as human needs. And for a lot of people, that's about keeping users happy. One of the things we might do in this space is look at customer satisfaction. So did they give us a solid 5 stars at the end of an experience? Did they leave us some nice words in the comment section? Are we getting a lot of likes on our posts on social media? All of this generates data, a mix of qualitative and quantitative. But it's actually how we stitch this together that will actually truly show the story of our user behavior and feedback on the success of our products. That's where there is true value. So let me give you a few examples of times that I've taken a design thinking approach to data in the world of emerging technology to help us get genuine insights into what's going on as we navigate new territory, expand our technology, and truly empathize with users in these changing environments. How can we help businesses to understand what it's like for their users, both internal users and end users of a product or service? We need to empathize and align, but how can we do that? And it's by making the invisible visible. I've run sessions where I've taken the senior leaders in organizations and had them sit with contact center employees on the front line, dealing with queries coming in. They were there to observe and empathize from the point of view of their customers and their employees. Sometimes the people making decisions can be cut off from what is happening on the ground. So it's important to use design thinking to help bridge that gap. What are the types of things that we learned in that experience? Well, employees were working off small monitors with multiple browsers open, trying to handle multiple conversations simultaneously. And instead of leaving the session as a leadership group saying, actually, we need our staff to increase the number of conversations they handle so that we can increase our efficiency and reduce costs, they were able to say, actually, how do we relook at the queries coming in? How can we automate some of those requests to reduce our human contacts while also making a more efficient and intuitive interface for our employees so that they can prioritize their role in solving complex user problems over jumping through their own technology barriers? A seamless user interface with assisted automation where they can interact and give users their full attention would increase employee satisfaction because they're working in a less stressful environment and on more meaningful work. But it will also reduce the speed to answer for customers and provide seamless data transfers across an omni-channel experience, making it a more personalized experience. When it comes to technical enablers, again, we can bring design thinking into the world of AI, because as we talked about, data drives AI. Data must be collected, cleaned, wrangled, or transformed into an appropriate format and validated, amongst other things. To ensure it's appropriate for the given task, all of these things have to happen. And this, for many, is a manual process. It can be highly laborious, and for many teams, and in certain instances, is being shipped off to countries such as Kenya, where people are being paid tiny salaries and working in extreme conditions for data that multinational corporations use. But for some people, that's a safer option than working in the sex or drug industry. So I ask, how can we ensure that the data being inputted into our AI technology is held to an ethically high standard? Again, by leaning into design thinking and looking intently with curiosity into how the data is worked. I've not only watched people process data to train models, but I've also done it myself. I've been able to use some of the techniques listed on the screen to help identify and address bias in data labeling before it gets added to models. I've been able to find opportunities to increase the efficiency and the safety of the team processing the data, and use clustering to help build out conversational design systems based on actual language from real users. Working collaboratively from the outset helps us hold ourselves accountable when we're working in the world of emerging technology. If we take the time to review the input to our technology by holding ourselves to high standards, we can all build better systems for ourselves and others. A sentence you will unlikely hear me go a day without is meet people where they're at. And by that, I mean technology should not be the barrier to meeting human needs. How people engage with your organization is essential to its success, but to understand that, you must get under the hood of what it's like for them. I hear people talk a lot about how we answered a customer's problem in under X amount of time, but my response is always, show me the omni-channel data to back up that they were satisfied or delighted with your experience, because most people can't do it. Or they say they didn't leave a review, so we'll assume that they're happy. But that's not always good enough, in my opinion. You want to get to know your users by talking to them. I saw one user of a chatbot system who was a regular user, and they always got through the chatbot flows quickly, but they never left any feedback. And they continually came back, which to me was an immediate red flag that there was a bigger issue. So I spent some time talking to that user to understand what was happening. And it turned out that that user had a hand tremor and was having great difficulty using the system. The tremor forced the user to click on a button-based chatbot where the button options would disappear once they were clicked. So the person ended up in a cycle of conversations they hadn't intended to have. There was no obvious return out of the conversation flow. The elements of the user interface on the user screen were smaller than they needed for the user's requirements. And they repeatedly found themselves stranded in a world where they were being encouraged to self-serve and use automated solution. And I would never have gotten those insights from the original quantitative data alone. So taking us back to our humanity and planet-focused approach to AI, I want to reflect on some of the reasons why having this wider lens is important today. From a business perspective, there are changing laws and legislation for technology. And as businesses, people need to be aware of these changing landscapes, whether it's the web content accessibility guidelines or data protection laws that differ by country. You can and will get caught out as society brings more knowledge, as society becomes more knowledgeable in these areas. A new legislation becomes and gets implemented. Our technology is also very much reliant on data, and that data historically is biased. And we have a duty of care to future generations to ensure integrity in what we do. AI is only one of many technologies that exist in the world. Seamless omni-channel experiences will accelerate businesses in the world of rising emerging technologies. Organizations who can genuinely say that no one is left behind because we will truly meet you where you're at will be the ones that succeed. And amongst all else, sustainable and ethical business practices continue to be embedded into the cultures of teams and organizations globally. The future of our planet and the safety of humankind is not a trend, it's survival. And with emerging technology being so draining on our planet's resources, we know that businesses and technology priorities need to find a path that does not conflict with the priorities of the planet's inhabitants. So as I close out from some of my experiences, I hope to direct you to some spaces actively working to live in a humanity and planet-focused approach to emerging technology. There's a lot of magic happening in this space, but we do need to take ownership and accountability. So you'll see on the screen, and I will happily share the links to these, just a few that I lean into. So the first one there is the Algorithmic Justice League. They're doing a lot of great work on the ethics of AI. I've also called out Accessibility. They are looking at AI and accessibility. I'm calling out Big Motive and the work they've done with the Information Commissioner's Office around digital safety for children. If anybody's interested in the customer experience world, Kian Sims from VUX or Vox World has been able to provide some great content, not just on LinkedIn, but in podcasts. But also, as I talked about, I did a master's in emerging, it was in UX design and applied innovation and a full module in emerging technology. Corey Lynch at the Atlantic Technological University is actively recruiting for anybody who is interested in actually upskilling and getting their master's degree. So I will happily share that content as well. But with that, I will pause there and pass back to David.
Fantastic, Caroline. I'm giving you a little virtual clap, and I'll use my real hands as well. I'm going to use my human hands in this conversation about technology. That's brilliant. So, and you're getting some claps in the chat as well. Thank you for that, Caroline. I was writing down some stuff for notes for myself because I know some of the things that Caroline is interested in. So I wasn't surprised to hear all of that, and it resonates with me as well. Really interested to know what other people think, and if you've got any questions. But you know, spent time understanding the problem by spending time with real people. I think that's a sort of fantastically important thing to remember. And for those of you that might have seen it on LinkedIn, I posted the quote from Laurie Anderson about if you think technology will solve your problems, you don't understand technology and you don't understand your problems. Badri's nodding away and chuckling there. But it's so true, isn't it? And yet you hear reports like I mentioned on the BBC that experienced surgeons are saying, yeah, this technology can make us better because they were very precise about the problem that they're not as good at, that working alongside AI can make them better at if they understand the problem in a human-centered way. Brilliant, Caroline. Does anyone have any particular questions for Caroline right now? JayZ has just been rebooting her computer. JayZ, give me a thumbs up so I know that you're back online. Oh, I can see you there. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing that you said that I wrote down was have a less stressful environment and do more meaningful work. Wouldn't that be amazing if
imagine that
if technology could enable that? So in a lot of the work that we do, we're switching between platforms and between contexts, and it can add to the stresses and strains. Badri, can I just invite you, because your screen's on and I can see you've seemed quite engaged with this. What does this stuff mean for you? What are the top things you're thinking about? There was a lot in there from Caroline, particularly around, you know, bias in the data. We know that's a real challenge for AI. You know, with large language models that are built out of data that's on the internet that's already biased. What resonates most with you?
Yeah, so very insightful talk covering many aspects. And now I come from product development and software engineering and that kind of stuff. So this gives me a different view of things. And you know, especially you know, we have a responsibility towards our future generations in making sure that there is integrity of data of whatever is being fed into AI, because at the end of the day, you know, it's all around data. And to your point, Caroline, you said, you know, there is bias in data, and you said, you know, we need to work on that. And my concern is, you know, how do we do this, right? I mean, this is going to be, first of all, awareness is required, and you know, assuming that we are aware, how do we do this? How do we do this across this big ecosystem? And that is something that, you know, that first came to my mind. And a lot of good links to various things that you're talking about, that you have provided the links. Many of them I have had no idea. So attending this talk is really you know, very insightful to me. A lot of good things I'm picking up here. So thank you.
Thank you, Badri. So that's great. Let's keep going with another talk that will get us thinking, maybe in a slightly different way, but I think will equally help us think about problems and how AI technology can help or not. So JayZ, I'm gonna, if you're ready, let me know and I'll go on mute and pass the floor to you. And I'll stick a 10-minute timer up just as a guide. I hit pause when there was a little bit to go because I didn't want an alarm interrupting Caroline, and I'll do the same for you, JayZ. We've got over 15 minutes if we want to use all the time we've got, so you can talk for 10, and then we can have another 5 minutes of Q&A as well.
Perfect. I'm ready.
All right. Well, if you want to share your screen, or are you just going to talk? Sorry, off you go.
I can share my screen.
You can talk and share when you're ready, whatever you want to do.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm JayZ of founderdesignThinking.com. It's a podcast. I'm at episode 40. And, you know, in podcasts, you see lots of talking heads. And, you know, when I'm clipping video, I clip like 20 clips for each hour-long podcast now. And literally, they all look the same, right? It's the same face talking to another same face. And then you've got 40 times 20, you've got like so many clips out there that look the same. And so I remembered in enterprise work, there are these graphic recorders who come to a strategic retreat, like a C-level retreat, and they'll like draw out everything that you, like the CEO is talking about, right? And so I started making these videos. So this is a car crash.
Just find out if your product didn't exist tomorrow, who would be the most upset amongst these three segments of research?
And so this is all, how do I put it? It's like computer generated, but it's not AI generated work. And so the idea of generating it using AI was like always like where I started. But I think David wanted me to talk about the pitfalls of AI, how it's actually really impossible to generate this video using AI. And I went to a lot of blogs and, you know, obviously I know about like Midjourney and all the image-based generations out there, but there are very, very few video-based generations. And that's definitely, you know, from an investor point of view, that's definitely a gap that they're interested in filling. So I found Pica, and it generates these short, like 3-second videos. And I started to play around with it. So it's interesting because as a product manager myself, like I would love to just use Pica as a front end and not have to build like UX. And so they're calling some model on the back end. And I even love to build the model more than the front end sometimes. So getting started, you have to be comfortable with command line. And I think anyone who is comfortable prompting ChatGPT would be able to learn this. So basically you have to type create, like this is the prompt. I think this is the prompt, so we'll try it. In one of their generate channels, let's say I've been using generate 10. I have to get the Zoom window out of my view. Okay. So in create, I can write like a black pencil sketch on white background of a car crashing. Okay, so I'm in the queue and I have to wait to come back and see what they generate for me. But then I also found this animate command. So you animate an existing image. And so I took a screenshot of the drawing that I already generated through like vectors and SVGs. I'm using OneDrive, so it's like slowing everything down because it's in the cloud. All right, so I wanted to generate this image see. Okay. Which is a car, but I want it to crash. Okay, so that's in the queue. So let's go back up and see if we can find the thing I was trying to generate, which is part of the, oh, here it is. Okay. So it is black and white, but it's not on a white background. And I'm going to play the animation now. Let's replay it. Interesting. So I think it's just moving the car up on the hill, right? And I don't know if I would use that. It just seems very too colorful. So, you know, in like CGI, you know, movies where you've got like James Bond, like, you know, and all these effects, right? I think Caroline's laughing. It's really like a blockbuster when you've got like a zillion colors, right? But in a enterprise context, when you know you've got like millions of dollars in the business, not in the movie, you kind of want to focus on your C-level who are speaking, and the graphic recorder is very quiet, like in the background, black and white, amending the data but not taking over. So I don't know that I would use this, and also I need it for a specific time period. That's the value of the podcast, is like you cut the graphic recording to just that, you know, 1 minute, and this is only 3 seconds. So let's see what we've got for this one, where I started with the image that I liked, just the black and white, and I asked it to make a crash. So it just kind of extends the lines, but it doesn't actually make the car crash. And so I think the call to action to ask is like, do any of you know of a model that generates clean line drawings? Or do you know of a front end that's already connected to a model that would generate this? So I'll just pause right there.
Thanks, thanks, JayZ. So that's really interesting, because for me, I'm hearing you've identified a really interesting area of opportunity in your own work, which is how do you further differentiate yourself in a sea of podcasts when it's so easy to make a podcast? And I like what you're exploring there. And I don't want to make too many assumptions, but I'm guessing you're thinking, well, maybe I haven't got the skill or the confidence or the time to do my own visualization. Maybe there's some technology out there that can help, right? Is that what led you down this journey?
Yeah, so I do have this skill, but I don't have the time.
Right,
you know,
okay,
like as an artist, like I could draw all of these, but I, you know, got to do business development and like bring in the clients. So you're right. I think I want to provide this product. Like I would productize this. I would make a tool for any of you to come into my tool and like generate a video instantly. And then my LinkedIn followers were like, oh, we want this to be a live widget, like in our Zoom meeting. And so I was talking to David, like, you know, it would take time to
it's amazing.
make
I
that.
think it's fascinating, because I've been to events where you have these, I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but JayZ was talking about, you know, the graphic artists who record the conversation that's happening, and they have to hear what's being said and then they write it. And the only thing I'm sorry, this isn't, and please everybody else who's listening in or write in the chat or come off mute, but JayZ, it's almost like you want the equivalent of, have you seen this thing from a company called Hey Gen, where you can record some video and then it will play it back as if you're talking in any language, and it animates your lips and so on. So it sort of, it replays yourself, but it doesn't do it in real time, right? None of this stuff can happen in real time. So I think it'll be really interesting to know if there's anything out there that can get as close to a human being drawing what you're saying as you say it. I don't know if anyone's got any views on that.
Yeah, that's exactly the right question. Yeah.
And I was just going to add as well, because as I said in the chat there, so I tried for my presentation, I was like, you know what would be cool if I go in and do some AI generated artwork for my presentation. I was like, cool, let's try it out. Let's give it a go. I'm really awful at using my words. And everything I tried to describe was giving me something that made no sense. So I was trying to create like an image that the world was basically sinking with the weight of, technology on top. But I was getting back a boat because I used the word sinking, and everything was at sea, and I was
that's great.
in space, and everything was confused. And maybe it is my Derry accent, absolutely badly going into any of these tools, but I'm visual. I always have been, and I'm visual because I'm not great with my words. And so to then have artists and designers be able to show up in this space, it's actually a different skill. And so I find it interesting, a real interesting opportunity for education around, and I'm doing an event next week with another university around how do we prepare artists and designers for this world? Because most people start off in that world because they are good at visualizing. Being good at visualizing is not the same as writing a prompt. You have to be good with words. You have to be good at articulation. And I am not good at that. So it's a really different personal skill to have. And like JayZ, this is a really great example of being able to show that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, JayZ. I've dropped in the chat, JayZ, the one thing that's coming into my mind, it's not quite what you're after. And again, yeah, it looks like prompt. Thank you, Badri. That's exactly what I was thinking. So I've put in a link to a storyboard creator, but it comes down to the skill of the person writing the words to describe the image.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna look for the
and
chat.
that can be that can be a challenge, exactly as Caroline's highlighting. And Badri, yeah, prompt engineering, a category of employment after all. When ChatGPT blew up in sort of January, February, there was a lot of people saying, AI won't take your job, but somebody using AI might. And I think that's a good thing to have in the backs of our minds. I don't know how long it'll be before you will be able to get what you want, JayZ, but I wouldn't give up just yet. But I think this is a really interesting conversation because storyboard AI may or may not be something that can help you do what you're trying to do. But it's that thing I put in the chat. What you have in your head, the blockbuster or whatever it might be, versus what the technology is capable of producing is a challenge, right?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things there, right? So the prompt engineering, I think we could all get there, but then the model, I think to Carolyn and Badri's point, doesn't have any of these drawings. The model just has like billion pixel rainbows.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll definitely look at storyboard, but I think going back to Carolyn's idea of, how do you teach artists to think in terms of text and prompt? It's this idea of synesthesia, and Chat GPT just launched like speech to text to image, so you can go across all of these sensations. But I wonder, I guess I just wonder if there's a model that
well, JayZ, to your point as well, that the data that we are building these systems on is based on data where we have been maybe typing our prompts.
Yeah.
The way we express ourselves vocally is different to how we express ourselves in the written form. And so that actually changes the data that you input into the models. So it actually takes time for us to then retrain the models based on this new data, based on the changes that have happened in technology. So you're in this real kind of inception loop of constantly trying to keep up, because human behavior is going to change the models that we work through, and we have to keep up with that. Because if we continue to train our models based on the written word, but yet our technology is on the spoken word, you end up very disjointed. Because if you trained Alexa on written formal letters, that's not going to work the same way. So it's a really interesting space to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, go for it.
Yeah, well, just off the back of Badri, Caroline, and also what you've been saying yourself, JayZ, I've got a suggestion based around the models. So we know that the models are all wrong. I did some experiments with Midjourney, and it was giving me the most awful biased images based on, and I tell you, I was trying to get my prompts right, and ultimately I thought it just hasn't got in the data set what I need. So I'm now wondering, do you think somebody somewhere sometime is going to realize that what maybe might help? Imagine the kind of example you gave, JayZ, of C-suite events, graphic recorder, and those things are being filmed, they're being recorded, the imagery is being captured, and that's happening at scale. And a whole new data set is being built off the back of actual conversations that actual people who are a rich mix of diversities and ethnicities and so on, what they're talking about and how that's being captured graphically. You know, it might not be available today, but it might be available in a year or 5 years. I don't know how long it would take, but it probably wouldn't be that long. You know, the brain surgery thing that I've mentioned a couple of times, it looked at 200 hours of video footage from real surgical operations. And in 10 months, it knew what would take a brain surgeon 10 years. So maybe creating these new models is what we need to do, exactly as Caroline was suggesting.
And
I'd love to, yeah.
I was going to say, to take us full circle, we also then have to remember that the environmental impact of continually retraining models does not fit with most of the environmental policies for organizations at the minute. So you are back to this humanity and planet-focused design. So full circle.
So it looks like I'm going to draw this to a close because we're 1 minute at a time and we'll be out of time. But it looks like it's not like the problems are going away. We've still got opportunities where human brains need to engage in how we can best engage with these technologies that are coming at us from the explosion in AI. But listen, thanks everybody. It's fantastic. Kate, you're about to go to another online chat called Prompt Generation for Community Builders. There's a market for it, Badri. Kate, come back to the next event. Let me quickly tell you, we're getting together on October the, help me out here, Caroline.
I think it's the 26th, I think.
October the 26th. There we go. Yeah, Thursday, October the 26th. Come back and Kate, tell us how you got on. But thank you, everybody. It's been another really interesting and stimulating discussion. We appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you on another show, another discussion down the road. Thanks very much.